Hey everyone, welcome back. Well, it's January and it's cold outside and it's a good time to be in the shop and it's a good time of year for me to start making some pots. So I've had a couple of requests to update this pot. So this is the pot that I made in my most viewed video. It was made 2 years ago and it's done really well. Really happy with it. I just brought it in today from the greenhouse where it was frozen. So it has frozen and thawed many times. It's got a nice red spruce in it and it's done really well. But today we're going to make a pot that's a little different. It's going to be made with this template. And this is a piece of MDF. And at first glance this might look like an oval, but this is a true oval. And this one is two circles that are connected by two straight lines. So it's a different shape from an oval, but it's been one that I've really liked. And this tree, this is number 8 in my top 10. And this is the pot we're going to make today with the cardboard and the tape. So the sides on this pot are 3.5 inches, and the bottom of it is about 1 inch thick. So that leaves about 2.5 inches for the actual place where the tree's planted in there. And this little piece of plywood is what makes that 2.5 inch depth of the pot. And it's going to help us shape the sand that's going to go on the inside of the pot. So the first step for this one is going to be to get the sand set up in here. So we'll speed this part up. Okay, so it's getting pretty close to the shape that we're looking for. And one of the things that makes these pots to where they're frost resistant is this curve here on the plywood since this pot is being made upside down, that means that the inside of the pot will have that curve to it, and that allows the soil and the roots and everything to frost heave upwards instead of going out and cracking the pot. So it's really important when you make this plywood piece that it has this little curve right here. So once I get it to this point, I use the trowel to make that curve a little more pronounced, and pack it all in. And this part right on the top here is going to be the bottom of the pot on the inside. So you want a nice curve there on the bottom of the pot. So you just want to shape the sand now to create the inside of the pot. So there we go, there's our sand for the inside. And because we want this pot to be 3.5 inches tall, the MDF is about 7/8 thick. So that means that our cardboard piece that we're going to make the form out of is going to end up being 4 inches and 3/8, 4 and 3/8 inches. So in order to make the cardboard piece for the form, I need to know how big this thing is all the way around. And the best way to do that is with a piece of string. So I can put my string on there and I know that that's about how big I need the cardboard to be. So this is a box that we got something in from Amazon. So we're going to take it apart because I want to use this factory edge as one side to measure off of. So I need this piece to be 4 3/8 inch. So I'll mark it at 4 3/8. And another mark down here at 4 3/8. Then I'm going to use a straight edge to make that cut. So with my string, I can see that I need to go out into these flaps a little bit to make it long enough. So there we go. So I'll be able to put the side that I cut down on the template so that I'll have the factory edge for the top of it. So I'll know that the factory edge is nice and straight. So if I use this just like this, the water in the concrete would degrade the cardboard and it would fall apart. So this is where the tape comes in. If you've ever worked with this tuck tape, it's probably the stickiest tape on earth. But we want to use it like a barrier for between the cardboard and the concrete. We're going to end up cutting this thing shorter. So it doesn't really matter what's happening right at the end of it, because I know from the string that it's longer than what I actually need. Okay, so we got our cardboard with the tape on it, and we're going to use this factory edge up on the top so that we know we have a nice straight line on the top of it. So we can see that we can cut it about right here. So I've got these pieces that I made that are going to hold it in place here on the ends. Okay, here's the tricky part. You gotta get these pieces taped together. Now we can put tape down on the inside. Make it right in there. The main thing is to cover that seam on the inside. Okay, that's our basic shape. We'll be taking it off at a time when the concrete is it's set up enough to where it'll hold the shape, but we can still do some sanding on it. So I'll be able to take out any of the places that don't look right on it. But it's basically ready to pour. So we'll be doing that soon. So here's my dry mix all mixed up. So this is the pot that I use for measuring. So it has 4 pots of sand and 2 pots of Portland and about 4 scoops of the terracotta dye, which is this dye. It's a powder dye. So it's really important to mix everything dry really well before you add any water to it. And using the powder color, it works really well because you can see when it all gets incorporated, when it all turns about the same color. So I've gone around on the form and I've used scraps of cardboard to fill in any places where it wasn't quite right up against the template. I'm planning on taking this cardboard off at about 10 hours when it's still workable, so I'm not really worried about these places where it's not quite round. That'll be all fixed with sandpaper at that point. So it's time to add some water. All right, so here's the mix. So for this, I want it to be a little bit soupier than if I was going to use a trowel, because we actually want this concrete to go right to the bottom, and we're going to vibrate it down in there. So we're going to use a palm sander to vibrate this. So this is a piece of steel that I salvaged out of a bottom of a of a lampshade. So they all have a piece of steel in the bottom of them, and this one just happened to be the right size for this, so I just easily bent it into this shape. This will give me some steel in the rim because that's where they always want to crack. So I use that little board that you see there to screed the top of it to get it nice and flat. And then I'm going to use my 1-inch copper piece to put the drainage holes in. Copper works really well to make these holes. You just give it a nice turn in there and makes a nice clean drainage hole. So this is a little trowel that I made with a piece of sheet metal. Very simple. It's just nailed to that block of wood. And I make all my feet with these kind of trowels. It's just a matter of packing it in there so it takes on that shape. It's worked really well. I've never had one break off the bottom of a pot. Sticks together really well at this point. So this is another piece of MDF that I know is nice and flat. And this is a really important step for your feet to make sure your pot doesn't teeter on a table. You want to make sure you have a flat piece of plywood to do this with. So that flattens them so that they're all on the same plane. And it's worked really well. is that you don't want your pot teetering on a table. So then after you've let it all set up for say 30 minutes or so, a wet sponge works really good to smooth out any spots on your feet that don't look good and make sure that they're connected really well. A wet sponge works really good to blend that concrete at the bottom of the foot. And the whole bottom can be dressed with a wet sponge at this point. So there's always concrete left over at the end of a big pot. And this is one of my favorite plastic pots to make a smaller pot in. It's really important to use a releaser, and WD-40 works really well so you can get the concrete back out of the plastic pot, because it will stick in a pot, and if you don't put a releaser on there, you'll have a big problem getting it out. So the bottom of this pot is taped so the concrete can't go out the holes, and it's just a matter of tapping it all down into the feet, because this one has really good feet molded into it. And then this is another plastic pot that's been taped so the sand can't go through the holes, and that makes the inside of this pot so the sand keeps it firm in there and keeps it from the other concrete from collapsing it. And then it's just a matter of adding the concrete around it. And these little pots have been a real staple for my bonsai business at the market. Since they're just made from leftover concrete, I have very little in them. And they've been a wonderful product for the market. So it's important to leave this on a level surface so the top of your pot is nice and level. And being an old carpenter, I always use an old framing nail to sign them. So it's time to get the JD in there. All right. Took a while, but I got through the tape without gouging it. Very sensitive at this point, but it's a good time to get some air to the sides of it. This is when it's still really soft. So you just got to go really light with the sandpaper. But this is when you can really shape it. I can take all these high spots out of it. So you can see the process. It's just going to take a while. You wouldn't want to use any kind of a electric sander or anything, because you can get into it way too far really quick, because it's just really vulnerable at this point. But it makes it really easy to shape it. So I've been working on it for about 30 minutes, and I'm pretty happy with it. I've mostly just used sandpaper from woodwork, because it's so soft right now, and this circular motion is really working on it. So now I'll use a wet sponge on it, finish it off. Water is definitely your friend with the concrete. It'll be important now to keep this whole thing wet. So it's been 24 hours now, and before we turn the big pot over, I want to show you the process on this small one. The first thing is to get that plastic pot out of the inside. Sometimes this can be a bit of a struggle, but you just keep pulling on it till you get it out of there. And using the WD-40, it pops right out of there. Works really good as a releaser. I always use an old towel, because at this point, if you put it on a hard surface and you dumped it out like that, it could break in half. Because even at 24 hours, they're a little bit sensitive. And then it's just a matter of sanding all the high spots on it, easing the edges on it. And then it's time to put a drainage hole in it. So I always use a square chisel for this. You just start working it back and forth until you can turn it all the way around. And you just kind of grind your way through the bottom of it. You can't do this after the concrete is set up a few days, but at 24 hours, it's just right for this process. And you just keep turning the chisel till it goes all the way through. All right, it has been 24 hours since the water hit the concrete, and it looks successful. It's gotten nice and set up. So it's time to turn this one over. I've learned to hang on to all of it, because I have had them slide off the bat on me. Best way to get this piece of plywood off is by knocking it with a piece of wood. That one's stuck on there good. So here's the template. So it is 18.5 inches long and 12 and a half inches this way. So now it's time to get all the sand out of there. So I'll get the sand out and I'll be back with you. All right, I got all the sand out of it. And this one came out really nice on the inside. When the concrete's nice and wet and you're using a form, it doesn't need dressing on the inside because with the vibrating, it made it all come together really nice. So the last thing to do is just to ease this edge. Both sides of this edge, I'll put a nice little radius on. All right, so we got a new pot. Now the fun part, I get to start thinking about which tree I want to put in here. There you go. How to make a concrete bonsai pot with cardboard and tuck tape. I hope everyone's having a great bonsai day. And I'll see you next time on Bonsai by the Sea.